Breaking news. An object from the depths of interstellar space, an artifact from another star, has just performed a maneuver that defies every model of celestial mechanics. At precisely 22:17 Universal Time today, the interstellar object designated 3I Atlas, a visitor of profound and enduring mystery, executed a controlled, non-gravitational course correction. Its new trajectory is no longer an indifferent arc through our solar periphery. It is now, unequivocally, on a bearing that intersects with the orbit of Earth. This is not a subtle perturbation. This is a turn, a deliberate, measured, and impossible reorientation, confirmed by the Atacama Large Millimeter Array in Chile, the Goldstone Solar System radar in California, and the European Space Agency's Deep Space Tracking Network. Moments ago, the world's most sensitive instruments registered an anomaly that changes the fundamental nature of this encounter. We are no longer observing a passive rock tumbling through the void. Something is awake, and it is looking our way. If you want to understand the full, unfolding story of what 3I Atlas is and what its turn means for all of us, you need to follow this channel. Hit subscribe and enable notifications. The evidence we are about to present will redefine your understanding of our place in the cosmos. The data streamed in not as a single alert, but as a chorus of disbelief from 3 continents. The first confirmation came from the high, thin air of the Chilean Andes, where the 66 radio antennas of the ALMA array, tuned to the object's faint thermal signature, detected a sudden spike in millimeter wave emission from its surface. Almost simultaneously, a defensive tracking telescope operated by the United States Space Force at the Maui Space Surveillance Complex reported a flash in the object's reflected sunlight, a glint too sharp, too coherent to be a random facet. The final, definitive lock came from the 70-meter dish of the Goldstone Deep Space Communications Complex in California's Mojave Desert. Its powerful radar pulse, meant to map the object's topography, returned a Doppler shift that was wrong. The velocity vector had changed by 0.3 degrees, a minuscule amount on a terrestrial scale, but in the frictionless theater of space, where motion is governed solely by gravity's immutable hand, it is an absolute impossibility. It is the equivalent of a billiard ball rolling on a perfect felt, suddenly veering left without a touch. The institution now scrambling to make sense of this is not one, but a coalition. The 3I Atlas Joint Science Initiative, a confidential collaboration formed after the object's fragmentation last year, links minds from Harvard's Institute for Theory and Computation, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, the Max Planck Institute for Solar System Research in Germany, and a secluded astrophysics group within Moscow State University. They share data across encrypted lines, their daily briefings a tense fusion of spectral graphs, orbital mechanics, and deepening existential concern. Until today, their debates were academic, a bizarre comet, a fractured asteroid, or something else entirely. Today, the debate has ended. The something else hypothesis has just received a signature of intent. The object has acted. To understand the magnitude of this event, we must rewind the timeline to the moment of its first great mystery, the fragmentation. 72 hours before the turn, 3I Atlas was a quiet, dark collection of 16 fragments drifting in a loose formation 1.8 astronomical units from Earth, just beyond the orbit of Mars. Its speed, a relentless 33 kilometers per second relative to the Sun, was constant. The Hubble Space Telescope's Wide Field Camera 3, observing in the near ultraviolet, showed no outgassing. The Spitzer Telescope's infrared eyes detected no heat signature from cometary activity. It was, as Dr. Elena Vance from Caltech noted in an internal memo, a squadron of cold, silent stones. But the silence was an illusion. 48 hours before the turn, the lead fragment, designated 3I Atlas A1, exhibited a minute but measurable increase in albedo. Its surface reflectivity, particularly in the blue spectrum, increased by 2.7%.
The Catalina Sky Survey in Arizona logged it as a sensor calibration anomaly. It was not. 24 hours prior, the entire cluster began emitting an extremely low-frequency radio signal, not the broadband crackle of charged particles interacting with the solar wind, but a narrowband whisper at 1420.40571177 MHz. The frequency was precise to a fault. It is a frequency known to every radio astronomer on Earth, the hydrogen line, the resonant frequency of the most common element in the universe, a natural beacon. But the modulation was not natural. It pulsed in a repeating sequence of 127 pulses, followed by 31 seconds of silence. The Parkes Radio Telescope in Australia and the 500-meter Aperture Spherical Telescope in China both isolated the signal. The pattern was prime. It was a sequence of prime numbers. 11 hours before the turn, the fragments, which had been slowly drifting apart due to solar radiation pressure, ceased their dispersion. Their relative positions froze. The distance between fragment A1 and fragment B7, which had been increasing at 1.4 centimeters per second, stabilized to within a millimeter. This required constant, minuscule adjustments. The team at the JPL ran a gravitational perturbation model 10,000 times. The result was the same. No combination of solar gravity, radiation pressure, or tidal forces could produce such a static configuration. An unseen force was maintaining formation. Then, at T-3 minutes, all anomalous signals ceased. The radio pulses stopped. The albedo returned to baseline. The fragments hung silent and dark in the observation feeds. It was the calm before the pivot. In control rooms from Massachusetts to Moscow, scientists held their breath, staring at monitors showing nothing but the steady, predictable orbital paths. They thought, perhaps, the phenomenon had ended. They were wrong. It had been a reset. At 22:17:04 UTC, it happened. Across every sensor monitoring the cluster's barycenter, the system's center of mass, a coordinate shift registered. It was not an explosive event. There was no plume of debris, no flash of energy release. It was a smooth, translational adjustment. The entire formation of 16 objects altered its velocity vector by applying thrust not from a single point, but in a distributed, coordinated manner across multiple fragments. The total delta V imparted was 8.9 centimeters per second, a tiny nudge, but in celestial navigation, a nudge applied at the right point over a distance of hundreds of millions of kilometers redefines the destination. The new trajectory, when extrapolated by the ESA's Gaia star mapping database, no longer swung harmlessly around the Sun. Its perihelion point shifted inward. Its path now brings it within 0.3 AU of Earth's orbital path in approximately 427 days. It turned with precision, with coordination, and with a quiet, undeniable purpose. The immediate reaction within the 3I Atlas Joint Science Initiative was a storm of competing analyses. Dr. Aris Thorne, a conservative planetary scientist from JPL, led the charge for a natural, if extraordinary, explanation. We are witnessing a novel form of outgassing. The object is composed of exotic ices, molecular nitrogen, carbon monoxide, trapped in a molecular matrix we don't understand. Asymmetric sublimation, triggered by a unique thermal profile from the Sun, could produce a jet effect. The radio signals could be plasma oscillations from charged dust. His team produced fluid dynamics simulations showing how carefully timed jetting from different fragments could, in theory, mimic a controlled turn. It was a masterpiece of mainstream astrophysical salvage. It was dismantled point by Dr. Li Chen of the Harvard Group. The energy budget doesn't match, she stated, her voice calm over the crackling line. To achieve that delta V via outgassing would require vaporizing approximately 10% of the total mass of fragment A1. Our spectroscopy from the Very Large Telescope shows no molecular bands consistent with such a massive sublimation event. The thermal spike from ALMA was brief and localized, not widespread. And the formation keeping, the synchronized silence before the maneuver? Asymmetric jets cannot explain that. This was a distributed impulse. Each fragment contributed. The debate turned to the nature of the impulse. The radar data from Goldstone was subjected to a brutal computational siege. They looked for evidence of mass ejection, dust, gas, anything. They found none. The turn was clean. This left only two possibilities within known physics: a solar radiation pressure effect, or something akin to the Yarkowski effect, where thermal re-radiation from a rotating body creates thrust. Both were dismissed instantly. The required surface properties for radiation pressure to cause this were those of a perfect lightweight mirror, not the dark, porous surface the fragments exhibited. The Yarkowski effect acts over millennia,